Good evening, everybody. I hope you had a good day. As many of you will know, my name is Billy Tessig. I'm the president of National Association of Women in Construction in Qatar. And as usually, on behalf of NAWIC Foundation Board, I would like to welcome you all here and thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to extend my special welcome to our partners and sponsors, Regency Group, Alfmach Real Estate Development, Qatar University, Public Works Authority Ashkal, GHD, Parsons, G-Sonic, Erga, Turner & Townsend, Qatar Financial Center, Lean Construction Institute Qatar, LCI, and TMF. Before we start with the presentation on forensic analysis, I'd like to note a few points. It's just a normal, let's call them housekeeping points. The session is being recorded and will be available with a copy of the presentation slides and videos next week for all attendees. To receive your electronic attendance certificate, you are required to attend at least 90% of the webinar. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation and we will answer them then. In case that we have more questions, we will send the answers to all attendees the following week. So the webinar will go for an hour up to an hour and a half, including the Q&A session. And during this time, we appreciate your full attention and please try to stay away from other distractions. During the webinar, we would really highly appreciate if you can submit your feedback, put plus for positive feedback and then delta sign if you have any suggestions for improvement, which we will take on board to improve our future events. Now we got to the key part of this evening presentation, which is me introducing our presenter to you, Rob Valenta. Rob Valenta is the creative director at Quantum, sister company of Quantum Digital. He looks after Quantum's in-house digital studio in Doha, where he manages his talented team of designers and artists. Rob is responsible for the creative direction of Quantum's unique multimedia solutions. You will be quite excited to hear that actually Rob has started this initiative and it started all in Qatar. Rob will tell you a little bit more about during his presentation. Rob serves all Quantum's international blue chip clients with captivating visual and creative solutions. So we will see some of the examples of Rob's work to date, and it's a very innovative approach. It's supporting the construction claims, and construction claims are very popular and hot topic currently. His career started at the BBC Television Centre in London, where he transformed the weather report graphics from 2D to 3D, as well as producing and organising real-time graphic for BBC's live coverage of the UK local elections and the 1997 UK general election. You will also see how impressive the presentation is, and you know, one picture tells 1,000 words. You will see that during the presentation. Prior to joining Quantum, Rob had the pleasure of working with some of the biggest brands in the world, in particular producing Star Wars print work directly for Lucasfilms in the United States. Rob has Bachelor honors in art and design, specialized in technical illustration and information graphics. Rob will now take us through his presentation on forensic planning, key for successful construction claims. Rob, over to you.
Thank you.
Just before we start, sorry, Rob, just before I start, I just want to explain to audience that we won't be able, unfortunately, to see you. There was a little glitch that we will just have to enjoy Rob's voice. The presentation is absolutely captivating, and we will miss seeing you, but I'm sure everything will be fine. So Rob, please.
Thank you very much, Billy, and thanks for the kind introduction and the kind words. And I would like to apologize in advance that our webcam doesn't work with this technology, but what I have to show here this evening is a lot more interesting than watching me. So, so here we go. Would like to thank NAWIC Foundation for this kindly invite. I would like to thank as well all the attendees for joining and for your time here. And we're going to have a great evening, and I'm sure that what I'm about to showcase most of you probably have not seen before. So as Billy said, this is a concept. Well, what I'm going to talk about is forensic graphics, or like I like to call it, CSI meets construction. So as Billy, she said, this concept of forensic graphics, we started 12 years ago in Qatar. So this is a product that was developed in Qatar, and then it was taken to places like US, UK, Far East Asia, the rest of the Middle East, and so forth. So I'm very proud to say that this is a Qatari concept that's now been embraced worldwide, more or less. So enough of that. So let's jump straight into it. And you're all probably thinking, what is forensic graphics? I've never really heard that before. I've heard forensic analysis, forensic planning, but not forensic graphics. So let me explain you the concept of forensic graphics. So we all recognize this, a typical written submission for a construction claim, and this is volume 1. And there will always also be a volume 2, and of course we will also have a volume 3. So this is a typical written submission for a construction claim, and this is only the exact summary. So we all recognize this. So using the traditional approach of reading and understanding, here we have a lot of technical paperwork that we need to read and to understand. We'll have numerous meetings, conference calls, but there will always be misinterpretations, and there will be doubts. So to make all these documents so much easier to understand and to avoid any doubts and misunderstandings, 3D animations like this are being used. And that's really it. No, so as you can see, these animations are very technical, and they are like a trailer for the written document, because these animations, they have a voiceover, a professional voiceover narrative, and all the visuals are timed to that professional voiceover narrative. So that means your technical issues are being shown and they're being explained at the same time. So this is very powerful. And the whole idea is that before you read all these documents, you watch one of these animations that has a duration between 10 and 12 minutes. You watch that, and when you're going to read the document, it will be so much easier. And more importantly, you have images implanted in your head of various arguments in the documents. And that doesn't matter if you're the one putting forward these type of animations or you're on the other side watching it. Everybody will have these images in their heads as visual reference points. And that is what's so powerful with forensic graphics. So by doing it in a visual way, you know, it's designed really to get people interested in your problems. And if you can get people interested in your problems, which we will because it's all visual, then there will always be a way forward. And that is really what we want in any type of construction disputes. So over the years, over the last, 14 years, I have produced a lot of forensic graphics for many major projects around the world. I've attended some construction disputes where I've seen forensic graphics has been used successfully. And here are some of the benefits. I just want to highlight some of the benefits in using this very visual approach. So the first benefit is that forensic graphics is a unique supplement to a written document. Some people, they might think, well, hang on, any type of animation is not going to replace a written document. That's correct, and it's not designed for that. Graphics and written documents go hand in hand. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a trailer for the written document. For higher management level, who doesn't have the time to read the stack of technical papers, animations makes it easier for them to get a good understanding of where the arguments, how the arguments are being presented, and to evaluate if his claim team has chosen to showcase the argument the right way. So it's a unique supplement to written documents, and it's very good for high management level to get a better understanding of what the claim is about without having to read it all. If it's done correct, and this is by far the most important point, if it's done correct, it can only be understood one way. This is, of course, very useful in joint ventures where you have contractors from all around the world with different backgrounds, cultures, languages, and so forth. And here there is a need for a visual, a common language, which is this visual graphics. Everybody understands imagery and animations exact same way. I was once in a negotiation 2 days before. I was sitting with the client. It was a JV. We looked at the animations, and suddenly the JV start arguing between themselves. How was the site obstructed? Was it from the east or the north? And they have been on the claim for like 2-3 years. It was not until they saw it visually, they spotted that and they start discussing it. So it just shows the power of it. Psychologically, in using forensic graphics in a dispute, everyone can see that you are well prepared, you have made an effort, and this is how you will present all future disputes. And I can promise you, it is very difficult to counteract, as nobody really does forensic graphics for construction like we do, so it will speed up negotiations. This is kind of the equation I have witnessed over 14 years of using graphics in a construction dispute. And it is just such a powerful medium to use, especially when there's technical issues involved. People just don't get it, and it's dry. No, it has to be visual, it has to be engaging. So having said that, let's look at some of the 4 most common formats of forensic graphics used in construction disputes. What I mean with formats is like the typical output that we have been asked to produce over the last 14 years. So the first format is 3D animated construction sequences. A very popular format, especially with JVs, are claim movies. I would say claim movies is a bit of a unique approach to quantum digital. So this is a really strong format. It's a format that we have produced a lot of in the Middle East. Again, there's a lot of JVs, and and I found people in the Middle East are more accepting towards visual representations. They are in UK as well, but still a little bit too old school. But places like the Middle East or the Far East, they are just more acceptable to visual representations. A very interesting format is when film footage or photography is combined with graphics, and then there are interactive presentations. I'm not going to talk much about interactive presentations in this webinar. Simply, I could spend another half a day just talking about that, but just think of interactive presentation as PowerPoint 5.0 basically. Everything you want to do in PowerPoint but can't, you can do that with interactive presentations. So let's look at the first most common format, 3D construction sequences. So this construction sequence is for the iconic FIFA Lusail World Cup Stadium in Qatar. This construction sequence was actually used for a tender where the contractor wanted to give the employer the confidence they could build the stadium and that they are well prepared. What is that's kind of really what we wanted to do with this type of construction sequences. And I'm sure you've seen this before. So at the top half of the screen, we have all the planned construction activities, and in the bottom half of the screen, we have the total planned duration of the project. When a planned construction sequence is compared with the actual construction sequence, that's when it becomes more interesting and forensic in nature, ideal for disputes, like this example for a commercial development. You can see some blank space in the middle of the screen that was used to bring up some facts about what went wrong, money and time. I had to remove that for confidentiality reasons. But this is really powerful, comparing the plant with the as-built. What you can see here is one of the standards we have to use when producing forensic graphics, which is using the familiar colors of Primavera: green for planned, blue for as-built, and red for changes, delays, or loss of money. So this construction sequence is based on months or a period of or certain years. But if we want to be more forensic about it, if we want to do more forensic analysis, that's when we can have construction sequences based on days. Like this example, where we look at changes to the formwork on one floor, multiplied with the total number of floors to show the overall impact. And we show the delays in days, how many days it took to do certain tasks and how many days we were delayed. So this is a more detailed and more forensic look at a construction sequence. That is as much as I would say about construction sequences. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen these before. So the next format I really want to talk about is what's known as forensic movies. As I said earlier, a very popular format, especially in the Middle East and the Far East. So a forensic movie, the idea behind a forensic movie is that it's like a short documentary. It's like a short documentary movie of a project that explains the planned intentions compared to what actually happened and the impact the changes had on the contractor. Again, here we will have a professional voiceover narrating throughout the movie, to which all the visuals are timed to. So these movies, they are high-level movies of a dispute. So typically these claim movies, they come out at 10 to 12 minutes. So to kind of showcase you an example of a claim movie, I've taken a 12-minute movie and I've cut it down to 2 minutes. So you will see some black cuts or jumps in the example I'm about to show you, but it's only because I've cut it down to 2 minutes. So let's look at the cooling plant buildings at Hamad International Airport in Qatar. And this will give you a good idea of how it works, how these forensic movies works. There's some audio, there's a voiceover narrative, so just make sure the sound is on. So here we go.
The engineer stated that the modification and details would be incorporated into the CP99 contract after award by way of a change order. However, that did not happen straight away. As a result, the contractor was delayed from immediately proceeding with Cup 2 design as planned. The contractor suffered delay to the completion of CUP 2 design as a consequence of the increase in design scope of work arising from the employer's modifications to CUP 2 building. Outside, chilled water pipes and standby power lines were now additionally required to be installed from the CUP 2 building to the catering facility building. Within the CUP 2 building on the chilled water side, the capacity of the original 8 chillers was increased from 2,000 tonnes to 2,500 tonnes, and foundation sizes also increased. The increase in size of chillers meant that the capacity of the cooling towers was also required to be increased. Claim 13 deals with more than 20 employer issues relating to change of design which are not covered in any of the contractor's other claims. For example, due to an oversight in the employer's preliminary design, the number of roof-mounted exhaust fans at CUP 2 had to be further increased from 9 to 18. Additional steelwork was required in the roof to support all the additional and enlarged exhaust fans. The nominated generator supplier increased the number of radiator fans it was supplying for the generator's cooling system to each CUP from 5 pairs to 6 pairs per cooler. Here we see the combined effect of the claims and change orders.
So this was
more than 45,000 additional design man-hours were required across the 3 CUPs.
Correct. So that last image, if I just go back a little bit, that last image of, okay, no, we can't.
More than.
Let's see, this last
Here
image.
We see the combined effect of the claims and change orders.
That was the message the client was trying to get through to the employer, was that yes, there were loads of small changes, but when you combine them all together, it's a completely new building. And that was really what the client struggled to get across to the contractor, this message. And as soon as they saw it visually, the claims and the change orders merging in together, yes, it's a completely different building. Yeah. What was really great with this particular sequence you just watched was that across 2 minutes, 30 design changes was explained across 2 minutes. And then we can just say how often or who can even do that, to give them 2 minutes to explain 30 design changes. With the help of graphics, you can do it, and you can bring the logic into it. As you saw in this example, it was very simple, that this change, which means that this then has to change, this impacted this, which that has to change, and then suddenly we have to have more cooling fans and so forth. So there was a really good logic in how these design changes were explained. And I can guarantee you, write this down on a paper or explain this down on a paper, you're going to spend a lot more time trying to explain it. And that is really the power I found with, I've seen with these type of forensic graphics. And that's why this type of graphics always has to be accurate, factual, and informative. I should really use that as a tagline, that it's accurate, factual, and informative, because it keeps saying these things that we cannot make anything up. Everything you see is done from BIM models, from CAD drawings. It's all accurate, you know, it's factual, you know, obviously factual from the contractor's point of view, but nothing is being made up, and it's informative. We are trying to tell something. It's storytelling. We're not here to produce animation and graphics to impress people. It's about storytelling. So as I always say, put yourself in a decision maker's shoes. You know, he has emotional stories from both sides, but he has nothing in the middle that's just factual and informative. And this is where forensic graphics come into play. And I strongly believe that whoever provides forensic graphics to help a decision maker reach the right conclusion will be acknowledged for the effort. So these type of movies don't have to be like one long movie that's 12 minutes long. No, it can be like what we see here, a series of 6 movies that's each 2 or 3 minutes long, but covering a separate subject. This was used for a mediation for a tunnel project in British Columbia in Canada, where the legal team kind of felt, you know, there's so much we want to tell. Do that in one movie, it will be too long. So actually, let's break it down to separate movies. And it was really good because in the presentation, every, let's say, half an hour, there was another 2-3 minute movie everybody could look and watch at. And it was such a good tactical presentation, I found. Yeah. What was interesting in this mediation was that during the mediation, the mediator, he regularly came into the contractor's room to just have a look at this certain element in this particular movie. So for everyone, it was obvious the mediator used these movies as a visual reference point. And that is really the power. Yeah, that he's just went into the other room, listened to them, and then he came back into our room just to remind himself what it is that just been talking about, and he used the movies for that. And it's because they're accurate and they're factual and informative. So that's really what I want to say about forensic movies, and then jump down to forensic filming and photography, because that is something we should all be doing on our project, is documentation, photography or film documentation of progress of work or any disputes. So as we can see here, this is for a arbitration in Ireland, for the M50 arbitration, where we took some video footage, and as you can see here, we overlaid some road lines just to make it more useful when the excavator comes in and start digging. And now we all know what it is we are looking at. Without this simple graphics, it will be very confusing. At the bottom of the screen, we highlight the amount of earthwork excavated over a certain amount of time. It's very simple, but extremely effective. So these, so this was done all from where film footage are stood on an elevated platform, are filmed, and everything, the whole reconstruction happened in front of me. However, it doesn't have to be a big setup like this. It can just be video footage or photography taken from your weekly or monthly progress reports, which is often taken on smartphone. Like this example for a hospital project in Qatar, where we used weekly progress filming to visualize the issues relating to the MEP services. So here we have footage of the workers to give the animation scale and to emphasize really the height restrictions the contractor suddenly had to work within. So that's really powerful. It's great to use graphics when it's like something that happens in the ceiling like MEP, or underground like tunnels, you know, because that's something that people can never take photos of, or something that's very difficult. So a cross section like this is really powerful. For a dispute in Hong Kong, we used a 2D CAD drawings, and we overlaid that with a simple 3D model of a beam structure, which was then overlaid on top of monthly progress video. And again, we did that to make the arguments more meaningful when comparing the planned beam structure with the actual beam structure. So this was all taken from the weekly reports, and there's a lot of tricks we can do to enhance the footage, to remove most of the shaking of the footage, color correction and so forth. So it just looks a little bit more engaging. For a power plant, or before the power plant here, I just want to show, this is a metro project in the Middle East, where we fade in progress photography with the animation, as you can see here. So here's the animation, we camera match and fade into the photography. And it's only to really to emphasize that whatever we are showing you is accurate. We're not making things up. This is accurate. Listen, we are even doing a camera match so you can see that this is accurate and what we are telling you is factual. I can tell you that all legal teams, like lawyers, barrister, they love when a contract and a dispute use photography. Yeah, 3D animations are great, but it is synthetic. So if you can relate it back to some photography of the project, you're really onto a winner. And whenever we produce this type of graphics for a dispute, we always hear that the legal team is like, oh, can we use more photos? Can we use more photos? It's tangible and you can't really argue with that. And then on to the power plant project in Iraq, where a client approached us. He needed a movie for a DAP hearing, so that's a pre-arbitration hearing. We had a chat. He showed me what he had available, BIM models, photography, and so forth. And very quickly, I could see, well, you have such good photography of the design infringement that there's no need for any type of graphics. You know, we'll just take your photos and then we will flash in red all the design infringements. Yeah, this was only a 3-minute movie. It took, I think, 8 days to produce, and he got the outcome of the DAP hearing he was after. So I'm just mentioning this, that again, it's not about impressing people, it's about engaging people to really, you know, storytelling of what went wrong. And this is, for me, a good example of that argument. The last presentation format is, as I mentioned before, interactive presentation that I won't speak about, that I won't mention here. But just so you know that if you sit there, have a presentation in PowerPoint, and there's so many things you can't do with it, that's when interactive presentation comes along. So these are really the 4 most common formats of forensic graphics that's accepted in construction disputes. There are others that will be accepted, but these are the most common ones that we see works best. I also quickly want to mention that at the moment I'm showing you animations and graphics, but just remember that still images of these animations can be printed out on paper, a 3 paper mounted onto a foam board, and they can be used, you know, in the actual mediation room, or they can be used in reports and so forth. So even though it's animation, still images can be used. So that's really useful. What I want to say, one of the reasons that the forensic movies, they are a popular choice here, forensic movies, is that sometimes a forensic movie can combine a 3D construction sequence and some film or photography, and that will all be in the movie. So it's not, you know, I would say, don't look at them as stand-alone options. They can all be integrated together. Like an interactive presentation quite often have an interactive construction sequence. So there's a lot of ways this can be played around with. Next, I will take you to a highway project in Hong Kong. So now we're off to Hong Kong, where a forensic movie was used in a high-profile arbitration. And even though this movie that you see here only focused on one section of the highway, so what you see here is only one section of the highway, the contractor, he won the arbitration convincingly of the entire project and secured a final settlement within 6 weeks. So I'm not saying that happened only because of the movie, but surely somewhere I believe that they had some visual reference on something that was very technical heavy, just made it easy. And I'm sure the other side sat there, how can we counteract that? Yeah, where do we start? Yeah. So I do feel it has loads of these great benefits. On this project, I just had the great fortune to work closely with what I was told the absolute best UK construction barrister in the business, Mr. Stuart Catchpole. And that was very interesting learning experience to be able to work with him, and just see kind of how a barrister perceives it, the kind of feedbacks he gives you, and it was just really good, and we simply just learned so much from it, or I learned a lot from it, and I, of course, passed on to the team. So as Stuart, he watched one of our latest movie previews. He could straight away identify problems, and I think that was really great, that instead of having to read all the documents, he could look at one of the previews, and then suddenly and straight away he could pick out, okay, this needs to improve, this is great, more emphasis on that, this is wrong, and I found that was just really amazing, that from preview he could then tell us what needs to change. And of course, we are working from the executive summary of the claim. So if there's something that needs to change in the movie, of course, then the claim needs to be updated to reflect that. So that was really good. So in an email after one of our movie previews, Stuart described this movie as follows. This animation is an extremely useful tool. I've not seen one with as much potential as yours before. It makes such a complex problem relatively simple to understand. So yes, of course, this is great to hear from the best UK barrister, but I'm showing this comment because Stuart's comment is more a credit to how forensic graphics should be approached by anyone, whether you're the client, the contractor who thinking about using it, or if you're the forensic artist like me producing it. The goal is always to make something complex relatively simple to understand. Nothing else. Yeah, and that's why it's good that I don't have an engineering background. I'm a creative, as Billy was telling you. I come from a creative background, ended up doing construction in an odd way, fell in love with it, developed this tool, and now we have this. But the good thing for me not being an engineer is I can evaluate it a little bit differently. I'm not emotionally attached. You know, I'm not afraid to say, how does this work? Yeah, or you know, and then and it might be something very obvious, but because I'm not an engineer, you know, things need to be explained, and my approach is always, well, if I understand it, then everybody will understand it, and that's really what it's about, being a forensic artist. As I said, there's loads of companies who does animation, but there's not many, if any, who does for construction disputes. It's a whole different ball game, which I will mention early as well. But what was interesting in Stuart's email are these two lines here at the end. There appears to be a physical model that has been constructed, which will be an invaluable tool if it could be here before Tuesday. So what Stuart was saying here is that because of the way it was rendered, the way we chose to make the animation look like, there was this belief that this might be a physical model. And he believes that a physical model, one of these architectural models, you know, you can touch and take apart and all that. If he had that in this arbitration, it will be an invaluable tool. And I 100% agree with him. So this is what a physical model looks like in an arbitration environment. I want to quickly say that we didn't do this. This is something I saw on LinkedIn that was used in a UK arbitration of an oil and gas plant. And I was like, yes, they beat me to it. Because that was really my idea. As we say, no, it's not. But the whole thing is that in this arbitration, they used a physical model. It's like these doll houses where you can take them apart, you can take a floor out, you can touch it, yeah. And what I like about physical models is with that, you're really touching all people's senses. You have a written claim submission to read, you have a claim movie that you produce to watch, and then you have a tangible physical model right there on the table that you can handle and then move around as you like. And that's really why I think is really good. Just before lockdown, I spoke to a barrister in London. We just had a chat, met up and just had a chat. I started explaining him about the use of physical models in court. And he told me that he once used matchboxes. You know, he once used matchboxes to demonstrate to the judge how an accident actually happened. As soon as the judge started moving the matchboxes around himself, this barrister, he knew that it will have a devastating effect on the other side. And those were the exact words he said. Yeah. Again, it shows that you're well prepared, and this is how you present all arguments. So I do feel that 3D printing will adventure into courtrooms very soon. I believe in that. And it's all part of, I don't know if you heard the discussion about construction 4.0, you know, where we start to be more creative in the engineering and construction world. We need to start using tools differently that we have done so far, and so on. And this is such a great example of construction 4.0. I did, again, before lockdown, a seminar on construction 4.0, and we talked a lot about these 3D printing because it is just an absolutely fantastic tool. And thinking about it, these physical models, you know, architectural physical models, they were very expensive, and they will take up to what, 8 to 10 months to produce and so forth, but not anymore, because we have 3D printers. Okay, so if we think about it, on nearly every project these days, I'm not saying every project, but nearly every project these days, we have a BIM model. We have BIM data that's given to us, that we then take into our 3D software, we clean up, we optimize, and then we create these animations. But since we have cleaned it up, optimized the BIM model, why not just spend another week to prepare this BIM model so it can be printed out as a physical model on the table? I mean, that is really, really special. Yeah. So it doesn't come with any huge extra cost. And to get these 3D models printed out, we use everyone uses a company in Belgium, Shapeway. They can print out in any material. It can be PVC, glass, porcelain, wood, metals, anything. It can be any size you want, and they will deliver anywhere in the world in secure boxes. So it just does make sense that if you have a BIM model, going into a dispute, get some graphics done, allow a bit more budget, and then you have a physical model that you can use as well. As I always say, these physical models are great as well as presents. I know it has nothing to do with forensic, but they can be used as presents. It's always the first one that's more expensive, because the 3D just need to be optimized and sorted out. And then once you print one or you print 10, there's no difference. Just the cost of the material of the PVC, if that's it. And what a great gift that is. So it has multiple uses. So 3D printing, I could talk a lot about. It's not because I've jumped onto a trend, but it's really because I first got involved with 3D printing back in 2002. So that's what, 19 years ago, for the Princess Diana Memorial in London's Hyde Park. So here you see, this is made from Cornish granite, this fountain here, and it was all done from 3D models that was printed. So I was part of a team, and we created hundreds of these accurate 3D models that were then sent to Northern Ireland to be laser cut in Cornish granite, transported and assembled on site in London's Hyde Park. So obviously when I first, I mean, this is 19 years ago, and it was still very primitive, but still back then when I saw that, I thought to myself, I cannot wait for this technology to become cheap and widely available, because I do feel this could really be a game changer. And I think the time has come now, that it has been now like for a few years, that these printers are cheap. Not many people really know what to do with them, but I think there's a strong case here. As Mr. Catchpole said, you know, it could be an invaluable tool. So, and that's what I think is very common with us at Quantum Digital, is that we don't just jump onto trends. It's something that we study. What do we have experience in, and how can this actually help you recovering your money and so forth. And our next step forward is 3D printing. So you might think, wow, Rob, you must have done a lot of things, yeah? And forensic graphics, you know, there's no education for that. And where did you start? So this is a little summary of myself. Not everything I've done, just highlights. So as you can see, as I said earlier, I'm not an engineer. I'm from a creative background, from film, graphic design, broadcasting, so on. I first got involved with, I first got introduced to engineering and construction in WSP Global in London when I worked for them. And I really took that job on. It's like, well, never worked in construction. Let's see what it's about. And I fell in love with it because I could see there was a market for it. I can see that the construction industry is under neutral with the options, you know. And I felt, okay, if I really specialize with something like forensic graphics, you know, I strongly believe it will make a difference. And I'm proud to say that over the 14 years, I've seen it does make a difference. But that was my introduction to construction. But forensic, as a forensic artist, that came with the London Metropolitan Police, where I was a 3D artist creating crime scene animations for crime scene investigations. So it was a seamless transition getting into construction disputes, as I like to say. But what was really good working for the London Metropolitan Police was that there was a lot of guidelines we had to follow, because one thing that the Met Police would not have was that they would produce some evidence material that could not hold up in court, that would fail. That would be a nightmare scenario. So a whole set of guidelines was worked out that me as a forensic artist, I had to follow. So just to show an example of a typical, this was a kidnap case. Bear in mind, this was done like 20 years ago. So obviously the quality has improved. But as you can see here, it was not about reality. We are not trying to make this house look realistic. No, it was about conveying some information that was very important. Yeah, and it had to be accurate. That was the absolutely most important thing. So I mentioned that we had some guidelines to follow with the Met Police when we produce forensic graphics. And some of these guidelines was, for instance, all the 3D modeling, you know, all the architecture, all the 3D modeling had to be within 0.5 millimeter accuracy. If not, it would fail in court. Yeah. And we were given CAD drawings to model against, and we knew that would be scrutinized by the other side. They will double check, is there any mistakes? You know, is this accurate? Have they made anything up? They will find one mistake and it will fail. Yeah, then they have to assume the rest is wrong. So there was a strong discipline there. We could not use any directional sun. We could simply not use anything that would imply a certain time of the day. It has to be neutral unless that certain time of the day or that let's say sun was important for the case. Yes, then we'll do a sun study, But in general, don't use any directional sun. It will imply a certain time of the day. I could never do anything that was, as we say, overzealous, like over the top. As a lawyer said to me, that's for Hollywood, Rob. That's not your problem. You're a forensic artist. Best example is the tunnel example I showed you in Canada. The first preview my team showed me, it was well, the whole dispute of the tunnel was that there was a tunnel collapse. So my team, they gave me a preview of this fantastic looking tunnel collapse. We have debris falling down, the machine breaking, the whole tunnel filling up with smoke, debris, particles flying everywhere. It looked great. As soon as I looked at it, I said, guys, this is really good. But if we are going to show this in a dispute, we need to bring in somebody who studied rock formation for the last 15 years and can verify this is correct. We need to bring in a smoke expert and so on and so on. Yeah, and that's why in the end we have to bite the bullet and say, okay, let's make it less impressive, but then there's less question to be asked and it's more accurate. Yeah. Another thing that we were certainly not allowed to use with the Met Police was any use of audio or sound effects. It was a big no-no. I'm only mentioning because quite often I'm asked, can you put on some background music, classical, and it's just no. Yeah, it evokes emotions. Yeah, so I'm mentioning some of these was just some examples of these guidelines, and I'm only mentioning it because these are the exact same guidelines we are using preparing forensic graphics for construction disputes. So my thinking is, well, if these guidelines are good enough for a murder or kidnap case, surely they are good enough as well for a construction dispute, and rightly so, because we haven't had any work rejected so far. We simply have not, and I'm very proud of it. But it is because the fundamental thing with forensic graphic is that thing of being accurate, factual, and informative, and that is exactly what we want. So often I have contractors, at the beginning of the project, they want to point fingers, it's him and it's that, and my job is really like, we need to be soft about it. We cannot point fingers. You'll push people into a corner and they will just defend themselves. No, we need to engage with them, and that's really where the graphics comes into play. And as I said earlier, there are many animation studios out there who can do as good at animation, even better than we are, but they cannot do it for construction disputes because it is such a disciplined thing to do. And it doesn't take much, I will say, it doesn't take much for graphics to be rejected by court. It really doesn't. So it is a very specialist subject. So that is really me and my career. And for you as notice it, wondered at the beginning, why is it called CSI meets construction? Here's the answer. We have taken everything from crime scene investigations and then put it into construction disputes with great success, I have to say. So that's just been great. So really, I want to thank the National Association of Women in Construction, Amna, Billy, and the rest of the team for allowing me to present this unique concept to you all. And of course, I'd like to thank all the attendees. You've been great. I can see if you're maintained here. So thanks very much, NAWIC, for the certification and for the appreciation. And please do ask if you have any questions and answers, even in the text box. That's I think how we normally do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Rob, thank you. This was absolutely amazing, and it was just a very informative, extremely engaging, interesting. So I believe our audience has gained a lot and has now another perspective on construction industry and what else can be used to basically enhance, especially situations when things need to be presented to court in the manner that need to be presented, you know, in the simplicity of information, and basically making sure that the right message is given. So, you know, Rob, I cannot thank you enough for dedicating your time and sharing your expertise with us. I will now ask you to answer the questions. So the first question, and that question came up as we were going to 3D models. And the question is, how can clients verify if the forensic animation is accurate and has not been manipulated?
Yes, that's a very good question that quite often lawyers, they will ask us. Yeah. I just had a meeting last week with a barrister on a arbitration, and that was the question he keep repeating, and it's not because I didn't hear him, but it just goes to show how important that question is. Yeah, that it's make all and be all for a client. So the best, I mean, everything we do animation wise, it comes directly from the BIM model. So we don't manipulate anything with the BIM model. We take your BIM model. If you don't have a BIM model, then we take your 2D CAD drawings, and then we model up whatever subject it is from the 2D CAD drawings. Because what I learned from Stuart Catchpole was that he said to me, Rob, you know that you might be called in as an expert witness. Yeah. You know, explaining and justifying what you've been doing. And I was like, oh my dear, I've never done that before. And that's when I had a chat with him, and he said to me, as long as whatever you're given from the client is accurate, if they tell you it's accurate, you can't do much more than that. Yeah. And that's why, you know, we always will ask for, do you have any BIM models? Do you have any BIM models? Yeah. And that's why we want to use photography, mix that in with the animation as a showcase, because again, it just emphasizes we're not making things up.
Yeah, and in terms of planned versus actual, I suppose the baseline, the program baseline has been used to produce, you know, which is agreed with both parties. But still, now I'm going to probably do the same as as the barrister. It's does the employer gets the opportunity to verify that they agree with that, and that's what they contractually believe it's the true and accurate representation of the baseline.
Yes. So your question was that if the employer,
yes, because it's you know, in the presentation, and I believe you do have a timeline, you know, with the explanation of how long does it take. But you know, if you are an employer, you want to make sure, I mean, I suppose the credibility has to be there, but does the employer get the chance to check that and agree that was it before it's submitted as an evidence or as a supporting tool to the claim, or that you just produce that based on the information that you've been given by let's say contractor?
Yeah. I got your question there. So first of all, everything we do is taken from a contractor's data. So we by default we will assume the contractor has seen it. If not, what we with all our work, it's being submitted in advance. It has to be disclosed so the other side can see if it's an employer, what it is they're gonna face basically. And again, sometimes I've been surprised, not because it's a weak story or something, or the graphics was not good enough, but sometimes I've been wondering, you know, we haven't had anything rejected. Yeah. That could it just be that, okay, this is just factual, Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose, you know, there is one thing is the information, and the other thing is the way how it's presented. By
Yes.
knowing how to present the information, you know, of course, you will produce something that just, you know, there is no point to challenge it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, it's probably not everybody can, definitely not everybody can do it. Definitely not everybody can do it. You know, certain skills are required, you know, to be able to present it and to maintain that that accuracy of the information, and to
Correct.
incorporate and to know what is the information that has to be included. And of course, you said, you know, there is always a written document that is complemented by the visual, whether it's 3D, whether it's a movie, or, you know, sometimes you can get even the tangible one, which is a model.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it is an interesting discussion in the terms of was it a couple months back we did some graphics used in a dispute. The whole team liked it, and they were really up there. And suddenly, a board member came in who didn't even know we were doing this from the client side, and you could just see he suddenly got sweat pearls, thinking, "Whoa, I've never seen this before," and he was very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
But he was uncomfortable because he wasn't part of the process from beginning. I mean, he didn't even know we were doing it, and I don't blame him. Yeah, because he's never seen anything like that, you know. And suddenly he raises all the questions that, you know, we discussed like 8 years ago, so forth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, written information is not as powerful to basically, you know, to see the facts as it is visual. So
I mean, that's kind of that's kind of where it started. Yeah. A little bit of how I came up with this concept. I was watching these programs on the Discovery Channel called Great Engineering Gone Wrong. Yeah.
I think we've all seen some of it, if not a lot of it.
Yeah, but that's when I start thinking, but that's exactly what construction disputes is about. It is just great project. You know, we all go into a construction project with good intentions. I would like to believe that we want to make the best on time, and we have all these good intentions, but it does go wrong. Yeah. And when I watched this on Discovery Channel, and I just saw, you know, how it combined, you know, voiceover narrative, interviews, graphics, video footage, and I thought, wow, I want to do this. Yeah. Because it embraces everything. Yeah. And that's kind of a little bit where the idea came from. Yeah. And so it's very unique. And really the purpose of this presentation is again educating your attendees with that. If somebody's thinking of using this type of graphics, as I said, you know, there's other animation houses in Qatar as well, not just us, but just bear what I've told you today in mind. Yeah, because us creative people, it's in our DNA that what we do is to impress you. Yeah, we will make things look like reality and all that. Yeah.
You know, I suppose, you know, just looking through your sort of you know, where you started, and you know, every step complemented another, and I suppose being a part of CSI, and that would you know, add to everything in terms of reality, in terms of facts, and you know, that it is an evidence. And even though it can be presented, you know, maybe swaying with any sort of, you know, colors, music, voice, anything, you are aware that these things are not supposed to be used. And I think it's you know, it's a very true presentation of the history of the written documentation of the contract, which you know, which is just a tool to work with.
No, absolutely. And I think one of especially in the beginning, that when we were using some of the animation, we have to tone it down. Yeah, that it was too good, like cosmetic wise, it looked too good, it was too impressive. I mean, if I show people work and they go, wow, that's not the reaction I want. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a kind of distracting from the fact.
Spot on. That's exactly it. Yeah. That when people they go, wow, then I feel okay, there's something not right here. Yeah. And especially in the old days, we were asked to. It looks a little bit too good. Can you tone it down a bit? Yeah. And that's against the DNA of any creative animator. Yeah. So that's why it's very interesting like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Let me go to the other questions. Can remote sensing be used as a tool in forensic planning?
Remote sensing?
Yes.
Not too sure how to understand remote sensing.
Maybe that could have something to do with real time and drones and.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I just spoke about the real-time game engines today, actually. And on a project in Oman, we've just been talking a lot about drone footage. Yeah. And what I can tell you from drone footage, the use of drone footage, and this is the word from a barrister, yeah, that he would prefer drone footage rather than animation on this specific project. It's a road project, so obviously it makes more sense to have drone footage because it's a vast area. But I really could feel that he was so much more comfortable with drone footage rather than animation. Yeah. So I would say drone footage is definitely it's a win-win. Yeah. But I assume that every barrister is different, but that is really important, and that's why photographic evidence, please find them, keep them, save them. They are gold when we come to something like that.
Yeah. Okay, another question. This is an amazing presentation, but what are the tools to use to produce such movies or 3D presentation? And is there any recommendation for program?
For program, yeah. So the beautiful thing about the tools we're using, they're all off-the-shelf tools. So there's no hidden secrets. So for 3D modeling animation, it's Autodesk 3ds Max. For editing, it's After Effects or Premiere from Adobe, and then we have Photoshop, we have Illustrator for all graphical work. So it's off the shelf. So it's 3ds Max for animation and Adobe Suite for editing and all the graphics work. We, of course, then have knowledge with Autodesk Rivet, Navisworks, Synergy, and many of these BIM platforms where we can import and export models. But it's a good question because it's not about the tools you're using, because all 3D animation tools, they are based on a unit system and to scale. So you could easily use 4D Cinema, or you could use Blender, Maya, Softimage, whatever. But 3ds Max is what we are using, is the most widely used. And I can only say there's loads of good YouTube tutorials on how to use these softwares. Yeah. But just to answer that attendee, I just want to tell that attendee is, please just bear in mind everything we talked about, that, learn the tools, but don't think you're there to impress people. It's about storytelling.
Yeah, of course. It's yeah. You mentioned earlier, Rob, you use a BIM model.
Yeah.
And I know, but in UK, it's mandatory over a certain value of the contract for BIM model to be used. However, this is still not a mandatory requirement here. And what happens if BIM model is not available? Is that a prerequisite for you to produce this information, or
no?
Or you can build it yourself?
Very good question. We don't necessarily need the BIM model. Yeah. it's a very useful tool because it's all, of course, accurate, because it's all 3D. We don't have to do the 3D modeling. Like the project I mentioned earlier in Oman, there is no BIM model. It's a road project, absolutely no BIM model. Yeah, all we have is 2D CAD drawings and drone footage. So the question in that on that project was, do you want us to model up, create a 3D model from the 2D CAD drawings, or should we just use the drone footage? The barrister wanted just to use the drone footage, but he then came back and said, actually, can we have some simple cutaway sections in 3D that you model up from the 2D? Yes, we can do that. And because we have been in the, we have done this for so many years. I mean, you have to remember when we started, BIM didn't exist. Yeah, so we have to do everything from 2D CAD drawings. So if we are now in 2021 to do that, oh, well, we've done that a few years back, so it's not a problem. So it's not a prerequisite to have BIM models.
Okay, and I suppose, you know, in terms of how long does it take to make the presentation? I understand, of course, it will be based on the information that you already have available or what you don't have available. But is there any sort of answer that you can give, that anything that's that could be a rule of thumb or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. On average, I should just say every project is different, but on average, around 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
8 weeks. 8 weeks on average. Like the power plant I showed where we used photos, the one in Iraq. I think I did say it took, I think it was 8 days. Yeah. It took 8 days because there was no 3D. It was just what is it called? It was just photos, and the movie was only 3 minutes long, and it was straightforward. Yeah. So it comes, you know, different, but on average, it takes these 8 weeks. Yeah. But I should just mention, it depends on what information do they have, and you know, okay, we need to like I mean, we worked on some fantastic projects in Qatar. I really can't mention them, but some really architectural challenging, engineering challenging projects where we had to we have limited BIM. We had to create from 2D drawings. I mean, and that took a long time, more than those 8 weeks. But that's of course part
of course, depends on the complexity, of course.
That's the first thing I'll ask you. Do you have BIM? No, okay, but then I know we don't have that. But then it's a different time scale.
Yeah. Okay, can someone learn this type of art science?
If somebody can learn this, what, sorry?
This type of science and art.
Absolutely. Everybody can learn it. It is a bit nerdy, yeah, I have to say. I think the reason why I enjoy it is that I do come from a creative background and have gone into something a little bit more rigid than construction. And I think this free world of creativity, fluffing around and all that, with something that's very structured, it's a very interesting combination. So I will say to anyone who wants to do this, you know, if you have any design kind of some creative flares and so forth, it is certainly a big help. I'm not saying it's vital, but it's a good help to assess what looks good, when to use cold colors, warm colors, composition wise. I mean, that's a big thing with the Met Police. Was all about composition, rule of third, you know, depth of field and so forth. But yes, everybody can learn it. I know I might sound a little bit technical, but yes, and there's some fantastic software tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah, and I suppose it is, you know, I suppose construction claims segment of the industry, you know, it's I think has grown from very little to being one of the major topics, you know, just over the last maybe 5-7 years. So now adding the sort of adding the visuals to it, creating movies, I suppose, there is definitely a market for it. So
I've always believed that, and it's a good point you're bringing up. I always believe that
if somebody decides to specialize in that, as a career, I suppose that there are opportunities.
Oh, I will say so. I will say so. And the encouraging thing was that since COVID back in March, since the pandemic, we have been extremely busy. We have never been as busy as we have during the pandemic. I remember just before the pandemic, I was on a panel discussing about paperless courtrooms. Which is quite interesting because then the pandemic and social distancing, everything closed down. And that just really think, is that the time now where people need this type of graphics, because we can't just suddenly become so much more busy than we have been, So I do think it's become the right time now for this type of things. And again, what I mentioned before with Construction 4.0, it is such a good example of taking an existing tool and do something different with it. So big hope for it in the future. I really do. I really do. And yeah.
Let's another question. If it's asked, what is forensic analysis in construction claims, how it can be answered in a statement?
Yes. I did see the title forensic analysis. And I thought, okay, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a forensic planner and so forth. But it's not to say that forensic analysis is a wrong term for what we are doing. It's just forensic graphics or it's visual. So I don't know, do you know, Billy, how we best could describe in general forensic analysis? For me, sounds something that's detailed.
Yes, and I suppose it's detailed, it's retrospective. I suppose forensic, as it's used in a police or a crime scene, it's not necessarily crime scene in construction. Hopefully not. But yes, it is. It is. And obviously, I don't know. Would you presume, Rob? It's visual automatically? You probably wouldn't, because forensic doesn't have to be visual.
No, it doesn't. That's the thing that might be confusing. No, I would say forensic doesn't imply visual, but you're right with what you're saying, and that it's in detail and it's in depth as well. I'd probably say that will sum up what forensic analysis really covers.
But
it's funny enough.
We have answered to this question. If we haven't, please post us more the chat box, and we'll try to answer it more in detail if it's required. Let me see the next one. Thank you for the amazing presentation. Is it possible to share with us the presentation? Yes, the presentation will be shared. So Rob will kindly share it with all attendees that we will be sending to you next week.
Yes, and what I just want to quickly say is that it's a 1.5 gigabyte presentation because of all the movies. So when Billy, you send them all a link, we will discuss it afterwards, but just be aware that it might take 10-15 minutes.
We have another one. Can you share the webinar recording of the slides? Of course.
Oh, great.
Have you considered 3D laser scanning as a tool, or do you see any limitation in the use of the 3D laser scanning?
No, laser scanning, again, it's one of these great technologies that's improved over the years. And I think the challenge for laser scanning, certainly in the early days, was the accuracy. But it's become so advanced now. I would consider using, my answer would be yes, I would consider using laser scanning. but it will have to be documented. Like, you know, where exactly, let's say if it's a room I'm scanning, when the room I'm standing, the height from the finished floor level up to the lens distances, just if I should be questioned, how did you create this? And I can see that they're about, they want to hear about inaccuracies, at least it's there. Yeah. But with 3D laser scanning, if there's BIM, there's not really much need for it. But to answer the question, yes, I would certainly consider it if it was needed.
If it's needed, great.
Yeah,
Okay, the next one. My question is about 3D printing in construction industry. What kind of material will the contractors use that are efficient, safe, and highest workability? Do we have sufficient material instead of standard construction materials, concrete, brick?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is 3D printing in construction. Yeah. I know there's been a lot of talks about that. Oh, look, this is the first little house that's been built from 3D printers and so forth. What I do want to say about 3D printing in construction is that it's still a new technology, and there's a lot of gray areas, such as standards. Yeah, it hasn't been tested and proved. Like a 3D printed high-rise building has never been tested in an earthquake environment, for instance. Yeah, it's about the knowledge of it, that it's still very new knowledge we have, and we, as I would say, we're still in a testing phase with 3D printing in construction. So to the answer, what material to use that we don't have, I can't really answer that, because 3D printing at the moment is catching up with being able to print different materials. Yeah, that's the first thing. Like the textile industry, the fashion, they really want to get into 3D printing, but 3D printers cannot meet that requirement of fabric. So there's still a lot of gray areas with 3D printing in construction.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's no standard.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was the other thing. There is no building regulation or standards in using 3D.
Yeah, and you know, from my experience, you know, for earthquake-prone area, which is Christchurch in New Zealand, and this year is 10 years. This month is 10 years of. It's been since the first earthquake in Christchurch. Sorry, it's a little bit emotional.
Yeah, it was a terrible time. I remember that.
Definitely, you know, the 3D printing is done mainly from concrete, and for earthquake-prone areas, you know, in New Zealand, we prefer to use timber construction wherever is possible for the reasons of, you know, so the building and construction is able to work with the ground and with the shakes.
Yes, exactly, and that is really the big challenge. I wouldn't say maybe a problem with 3D printing. It just doesn't meet those requirements, and that's why whenever you see 3D printing being used in construction, it's always like small houses or cabins and the bridges. You know, I know there's one in Madrid. They're claiming that's the first 3D printed bridge, and when I saw that bridge, it's a small little bridge. It's like if that bridge breaks, I fall into, it's not even a river, it's just a little bit of water underneath it. Yeah. And it's like, okay, fair enough. Yeah. It doesn't meet any standards. Yeah. So you're right. You know, it is the early days to use 3D printing in construction, I would certainly say.
Yeah, and probably in a smaller scale, you know, it's safer to start that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why the 3D printing I'm talking about is better known as desktop printing. It's basically something that you can have on your table. Yeah, because I think it's a long way before we can start building high rises with 3D printing.
Yeah. And there is one more question here, which my apology, I'm not too sure. It probably came at the time when we were discussing something. So it says, does it mean more about calculations or history of claim?
Yeah. Sorry that there was just a high-pitched noise suddenly arriving as you were reading out the question. Do you mind
okay.
just?
Does it mean more about calculations or history of claim? And again, I think that question must have come when we were discussing something, because you know, there was probably a context to this. But I will feel free to interpret it myself. And again, if I'm wrong, please correct me and add something more in the question box. But I think in preparation of the your evidence, is it more about the calculation or the history of claim? Probably events versus, you know, because there are theories how the claim is calculated, and you know, there are formulas.
Yes, I will say it's most of the time it's about the history. Yeah, it's about the history. I don't know if anyone has heard of a software called construction system dynamic. It's a way to calculate disruption. And we have actually recently been doing some projects with a company called Construction System Dynamics, where it's all about how did we get to those numbers, rather than the history of the project. So that was very interesting, but quite often I will say it's about the history of the project. Like one of the things I learned from Stuart on this arbitration in Hong Kong I talked about earlier was that with these movies, when you go into arbitration, do not mention loss of money, do not mention time. Yeah, you know, because in an arbitration, everybody knows that. Yeah, this movie is about to bring the facts on the table. It's about the history. Yeah. But whereas in mediation, we can bring in numbers, loss of money, time, and so forth, but just not in arbitration. We can't. It's recommended not to.
And Rob, if I can ask you another question, what is your opinion in using artificial intelligence and algorithms in construction claim?
Well, I've actually done my university dissertation in UK on artificial intelligence, so I know quite a lot about it. It's again artificial intelligence. It is very new. Well, it's been around for a while, but it's still very new. I mean, the thing is with artificial intelligence, it's all based on pattern recognition. Yeah,
which can go horribly wrong.
I know. So if you want create some artificial intelligence, it's about pattern recognition. So if you keep repeating doing the same thing, that artificial intelligence will then simulate that, and then like you walk down the street, there's a wall in front of you, you stop. Yeah, and if you keep doing that, the intelligence, the AI will then recognize that and then react like that. And I think before that comes into disputes, I think that's going to take quite a while, because there's too many unknown factors with artificial intelligence. I mean, we even seen films where we have a perfectly world of AI robots, and suddenly these AI robots get a glitch and they take over the world. You know,
it goes wrong.
It goes wrong. It goes wrong. And that's why I feel like with AI in general, it will take a few years before we can say that is really true intelligence. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but algorithms like the ones I mentioned, it is based a little bit not on artificial intelligence, but a little bit on pattern recognitions and so forth. So maybe algorithm is a better word to use than maybe AI in claims.
Yeah, and Rob, if you obviously you have presented on this, and is there anything that we have not asked you, that there's anything else you would like to share with us, or anything else that you normally get asked and we did not ask you?
I think you've asked some really, really good questions, and I'm really impressed with the interactions of the attendees. Some very, very good questions.
Very great questions.
There's been some questions that I haven't been asked before, which is always good. But I think in general, these are the questions. I mean, obviously the one a lot of people ask me, how much does it cost? Yeah. Which is a little bit in line with, you know, how long does it take? Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously 8 weeks is much cheaper than 8 weeks. Yeah. But to kind of, I mean, I always feel like I need to give an answer. I can't just say, oh, it depends here. But just roughly speaking, like in one of these movies, like I showcased earlier, you know, of Hamad International Airport, the cooling tower building, it's around those 40 to 50,000 US dollars. Yeah. Whereas the project that took 8 weeks, Iraq power plant, I think that came down to $9,000. Yeah.
Yeah. But as you said earlier, you know, in 2 minutes, you have explained 30, was it 30 changes, which is extremely powerful, and message, and I suppose, you know, it speeds up negotiation. So while it may seem, I mean, yes, of course, it's additional cost, but the value of spending that money, it's probably greater than delaying or not being clear.
I mean, I think it's right what you did there, Billy. That 2 minutes, 30 design changes. Yeah. Get a lawyer to explain that. 30 changes. You know, it'll cost you more. Yeah. You know, and it's all relative. I mean, obviously, with new clients, we never work with, you know, oh, can we have a discount and this and that, and you know, and so forth. But once they have the project, they can actually, this is really good. Like, this is really helping us. And quite often I do hear people when I speak to them about forensic graphics, like, "Ooh, I wish I knew that a couple of weeks back."
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that there is any doubt. You know, it's extremely powerful. You know, it definitely shortens the time, and I think that's obvious. You know, from just seeing it for the very first time. So.
But I want to mention that these it can come in different lengths. Like in the one in Iraq, the power plant was only 4 minutes long. Yeah, it was only 4 minutes long. Yeah, and I'm more into these short movies. Yeah, of course, well, it's cheaper, but you know, it's quicker to do. But quite often you can really get so much across in 4 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose that will again depend, you know, to the particular case, to, you know, what is more beneficial.
Absolutely. But in general, I think the attendees asked some fantastic questions, some new ones I never had. So I think that's you know, the cost and how long does it take. That's normally what I am being asked. Yeah.
Oh well, Rob, I'm gonna thank you again for this wonderful presentation. It's you know, it's. I think all of us have learned more and now know what's available and you know, what else can be done. It's definitely another career direction, something, you know, that's becoming more and more present in the industry. So
all I just want to say at the end is that if you ever find yourself in a meeting going into dispute and everybody's running out of ideas and, oh, what should we do and how can we convince and all that, just somebody to put up the hand and say, what about graphics? You know, people will suddenly wake up and listen to you. I'm not saying they're going to go for it or and all that, but it is really, whoever mentioned that in a meeting, you know, wow, you brought something new to the table. Yeah. It's always worth doing it like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we hope we're going to see you in Qatar very soon.
As soon as they open up, I can't wait to come back home. I feel like saying it's my second home in Qatar.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I know. So I really miss being there. But I have to say, your attendees has been really fantastic. I've seen they maintained throughout, and it's a lovely thing. So, so really, I just want to thank them a million times for great participation, great questions, and of course to yourself, Billy and Amna, for
My absolute pleasure.
Approaching me and giving me this chance.
Yeah. I think we were very privileged to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. But yeah, so I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm aware that we're getting up to hour and a half, so I don't want to hold up people. But
I think yeah. I think we are just about to wrap up. So yeah, as Rob said, I wish also to thank you all for your attention and for your attendance. We will be posting our future events. We hope to be back on live events depending on the restrictions and how that goes. So please keep your eye on our posts, and we hope you will join us again. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Good
thank you
evening,
very
all.
much. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.